One fixture of boarding actions, at least in popular imagination, is the boarding axe. A nasty little weapon with a chopping blade on one end and a curved spike on the other. In his famous novel of the Napoleonic Wars, Master and Commander, Patrick O'Brien has one of his characters cherishing the curved spike of a boarding axe, saying over and over again, "I'll hit the buggers, I'll hit the buggers, I'll hit the buggers." In The Further Adventures of Robinson Crusoe, Daniel Defoe describes a band of sailors as gallantly armed, every man having a musket, bayonet, and a pistol, besides cutlasses, hangers, pole axes, and hand grenades. But were boarding axes really used, or are they merely a creation of imaginative authors? The answer is more complicated than you might think. Axes were certainly carried by naval vessels, and in great quantities. A 1797 list of naval stores for USS Constitution includes 100 boarding axes. We also know that they were used in combat, despite an 1850 manual of naval instructions declaring them inferior to thrusting weapons such as the musket and bayonet, pike, and cutlass. The log of HMS Defiance records that, at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, a certain Mr. Spratt, an active young master's mate, took his cutlass between his teeth and his battle axe in his belt, called to the 50 other boarders he was leading to follow, leapt overboard, and swam to La Agile, a French ship, followed by a few men. Another Royal Navy sailor, John Nichols, remembered of his time in the Napoleonic Wars. "I was one of the boarders. We were all armed when required, with a pike to defend our own vessel should the enemy attempt to board, and a tomahawk, cutlass, and brace of pistols to use in boarding them." This engraving by Ambrose Louis Garneret depicts the boarding of the East Indiaman Triton by a French privateer, Robert Surcouf, in 1796. As you can see, several sailors are pictured using boarding axes, employing both the chopping blade and the curved spike. Now, the accuracy of maritime artwork is always a bit suspect, but Garneret was himself a naval sailor and corsair, who actually sailed with Surcouf. With credentials such as these, it is hard to doubt the accuracy of his portrayal. As deadly as a boarding axe can be in a fight, they also have many other, less grisly applications. One important use of the boarding axe is to cut the grappling lines used to draw enemy ships together. At other times, the crew of an attacking ship might intentionally run the yards of their vessel into the rig of a ship that they wish to fight, preventing their quarry from fleeing. In such situations, the other ship's crew might well use boarding axes to cut themselves free and perhaps escape. Boarding axes are also useful for clearing away the wreckage of masts, spars, and sails shot down during a sea fight. These masses of torn canvas, splintered wood, and tangled cordage can very easily clutter up a deck, or even trail behind a ship, slowing her down. A few well-placed blows with a boarding axe are often all that it takes to free a ship of such dangerous entanglements. Sometimes, in an effort to prevent their vessel from being boarded, a ship's company will deploy a device known as a boarding net. This is a stout rope net suspended from the rig and strung around a ship's bulwarks to make it more difficult for attackers to board. You can actually see one in use on the left side of this illustration of the cutting out of HMS Hermione from a few weeks ago. In such situations, a boarding axe becomes invaluable for cutting holes in the net. To make this more difficult, boarding nets are sometimes covered in tar, or even, in the words of one British sailor, made of ratlin rope with, here and there, a small chain running through its entire length to prevent cutting by the enemy. Even with such countermeasures as these, a skillfully wielded boarding axe is often more than up to the challenge. And so, there you have it, a bit of background on this peculiar weapon of the seas. Whether employed as a fighting implement or used to break down doors and bulkheads, a boarding axe is truly a versatile tool.